How can an offense that carry death penalty, a judge reduce it to 20 years in prison? That is not acceptable. Violated the laws passed by the parliament. It has. Somebody convicted of terrorism was sentenced to 20 years in prison.
Sẹ́rí ẹ máa farabalẹ̀ lónìí nítorí pé important national issue gangan la fẹ́ sọ̀rọ̀ lé lórí lónìí. Àmọ́ èmi kọ́ ni mo fẹ́ sọ o. Ta ló fẹ́ sọ? Adams oshiomhole òun ló fẹ́ sọ̀rọ̀ lórí ẹ̀. Ọ̀rọ̀ yìí ń gbóná nítorí pé ọ̀rọ̀ tó ṣe pàtàkì sí gbogbo àwọn ọmọ Nàìjíríà ni gbogbo àwọn ọmọ Nàìjíríà pátápátá ọ̀rọ̀ tó ṣe pàtàkì sí wa ni nítorí pé a ti ń béèrè a ti ń ṣe àwọn ìbéèrè kan a ti ń béèrè àwọn ìbéèrè kan a ti ń ṣe àwọn ìwádìí kan a ò tí ì rí àbọ̀ kíní yóò tí ì jáde. Àṣẹ ìbáṣe sọ yẹn àwọn náà ń gbọ́ wọ́n ń gbọ́ àmọ́ lónìí Adams oshiomhole ó tán wọ́n sí gbogbo fọ́gbáyánga bàbá yìí sọ̀rọ̀ ẹ̀gbọ́n àkọ́kọ́ nínú ọ̀rọ̀ rẹ̀ tó sọ ó wí pé ta ló pàṣẹ fún àwọn ọmọ ológun kí wọ́n kúrò ní Kebbi State ní skul tó ti lọ jẹ́ àwọn ọmọ yẹn kó ó ní ta ló ọ̀dà ta ló pàṣẹ wípé kó kúrò ó ní ẹni tó pàṣẹ yẹn ó ní pé wọ́n gbọ́dọ̀ mú ọ̀gá àgbà lógun tó bá pàṣẹ yẹn ó ní wọ́n gbọ́dọ̀ mú kó fi ojú rẹ̀ winá òfin wípé ìdájọ́ tí wọ́n sì gbọ́dọ̀ fún ìdájọ́ àwọn agbésùnmọ̀mí ìdájọ́ tó ti kọ́lẹ̀ wípé wọ́n máa dá fún àwọn agbésùnmọ̀mí tó jẹ́ ẹjọ́ kú òun ni wọ́n gbọ́dọ̀ dá fún ẹni bẹ́ẹ̀ ọ̀nìtàlẹ́ni náà ipe ẹni náà wọ́n gbọ́dọ̀ wá jáde ó ní wọ́n gbọ́dọ̀ mú iná kó tàn sí ìdí ẹ̀ báyìí kó tàn sí kó wá jáde níbikíbi tó bá wà ẹni tó pàṣẹ yẹn ó ní kó mú jáde ó ní kó wá jáde wọ́n gbọ́dọ̀ ẹgbọ́ látẹnu ẹ̀ ẹgbọ́ lẹ́kùnrẹ́rẹ́ ẹgbọ́ Adams oshiomhole ló èmi kọ́ mo sọ sínétọ̀ Adams oshiomhole mo ló sọ bẹ́ẹ̀ ẹgbọ́ látẹnu ẹgbọ́.
Mr. President, I am not ashamed to affirm that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is doing his best.
Correct.
He's doing his best. That we have not yet there doesn't mean that he has done anything knowingly, whether by negligence or lack of interest. Under your leadership, Mr. President, you have encouraged us to approve not once, not twice, special supplementary budget to support our armed forces, arising from the request of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. Those requests were not meant for the armed forces to buy ice cream. It wasn't meant for them to do tobola in military nightclubs. They are meant to strengthen the armed forces, to re-equip them, to give them access to acquire modern technology, and to train, and even now, directive to recruit more men and women into the armed forces. Therefore, there can be no question that President Tinubu is doing his best. In moments like this, the devil can come in and make us so confused that we might turn against ourselves and then, by default, allow the enemy to behave as if he's happy at an upper hand. However, what I think we should do, which under your leadership, even in your statement, you have already encouraged us to come up with such suggestion, is in the light of what we now know, what can we begin to do differently and contribute those ideas to support the executive initiative? One there, for example, is, and you amplified it, even in greater details than any one of us in this house, when you revisited the statement by the governor of Kebbi State. Nigerians are entitled to know, and it is no longer national secret, the commander of that area who ordered that those men be withdrawn. It is to be a national secret to be kept within military cycle. Nigeria should know the name, and the person should be brought to justice under the Terrorist Act. Number two, Mr. President.
Is it the view of the Senate that the issue you just canvassed now, that should form part of our prayers?
Yes.
Those who support say aye. Aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. That is taken. Yeah. We will form part of our prayers.
Mr. President, under your leadership, we have passed death penalty on terrorism. This parliament is on record as having done that. Mr. President, I am troubled when, after all the efforts that security agencies and the prosecuting authorities have to invest to secure conviction, because unfortunately the state cannot behave like a mob. So you have to prosecute, follow due process. I am troubled by the conflicting judgment by various high court judges, where the law says act of terrorism, if convicted, shall attract death penalty. No judge has a right to pronounce less than that. It is only when you have implemented the law, interpret the law, not the sentiment of a judge, the will of the people as conveyed in a law, then the president can decide if there are reasons for him to do so, whether to commute or to reduce. How can an offense that carry death penalty, a judge reduce it to 20 years in prison? That is not acceptable. He has violated the laws passed by the parliament. Number 3, sir, and this will be the last.
Has that happened in Nigeria already?
It has.
That
somebody convicted of terrorism was sentenced to 20 years in prison.
No.
Can I be allowed to land? The Swiss senator, you have Mr. President, that is the leader of Assad. They have a group.
You have 30
a
seconds.
Terrorist group called Assad.
You have 30 seconds to land, but please be guided.
Okay.
Let's concentrate on the issue in discussion.
I will be guided. These are our people. For example, somebody allegedly kills someone who came to attack him on his farm, and because he killed in self-defense, the man was sentenced to death. But there is no evidence that those who have come to attack farmers and kill farmers, there is no evidence that they have been so convicted, sentenced to death. These are some of the issues we have to deal with so that nobody is given any excuse to misunderstand what is clearly a national challenge. I believe that President Tinubu inherited a situation that was already so complicated that no one of us, if we were to become president, can decree insecurity out of existence overnight. But we can begin to mobilize discernible action. We can begin to re-examine some of the discontent, but also call on the security chiefs. I am sure my colleagues here, you listen when the chief of defense staff said there is what they call war economy. That is to say, there are officers who may well be making money from this crisis. And that is why the issue of accountability, even on the part of the armed forces, is now a requirement that our relevant committees should be able to work on and ensure that we do not have saboteurs in the army or those who don't want the crisis to end, such that, we keep appropriating money, people are getting richer, and more Nigerians are being wasted. But I conclude by saying, all of us must commend the president for what he has been doing. If you see his face on television, you know that the president is not sleeping. What we need is our collective wisdom to reinforce his own limited wisdom, because nobody has monopoly of wisdom, so that together we can find a holistic solution. This situation calls for national unity. It calls for collaboration. We must not talk as Christians or as Muslims. We must not talk as Northerners or Southerners, Easterners or Westerners. It's a national challenge and we need a national solution.
Ẹ ṣùgbọ́n nǹkan tí bàbá yìí sọ wípé ó ní wípé kí ló dé tí ẹ ṣe máa dájọ́ nǹkan tó wà nílẹ̀ gangan ni wípé ẹnikẹ́ni tí wọ́n bá ká wípé ó ń ṣe agbésùnmọ̀mí tó jẹ́ agbésùnmọ̀mí tó mú bóyá Boko Haram ni o, bóyá ISWAP o, bóyá onírúurú ìwà agbésùnmọ̀mí àbí X-Men o, ẹni wọn tó jẹ́ pé pààyàn ni iṣẹ́ tó yan láàyò, ó ní ìdájọ́ wọn ni kí wọ́n pa wọ́n, ìdájọ́ kú ni òun ẹjọ́ tó wà nílẹ̀. Ó ní pé kí ló wá dé tí ẹ wá gbé ẹjọ́ yẹn kúrò lẹ́jọ́ kú tẹ́ wá lọ gbé sí ẹ̀wọ̀n 20 ọdún 20 years imprisonment. Ọ̀rọ̀ yìí ó bí bàbá yìí nínú. Ó ní kí ló dé tó ṣe níbẹ̀. Ààrẹ ilé ìgbìmọ̀ aṣòfin gan ojú ẹ̀ kúrò sóní pé ṣé lóòótọ́ ni. Bàbá ó ní lóòótọ́ ni Adams Oshiomhole, Chairman Adams Oshiomhole, gómìnà ìpínlẹ̀ Edo ní ìgbà kan rí mo ní Adams Oshiomhole tó dì sí jẹ́ wípé àwíkoko kọ́ lọ́rọ̀ gbọ́ ni tọ́lọ́rọ̀ bá gbọ́ kí ló bá fi ṣe ó máa sọ Adams mo jẹ́rìí ẹ̀. Ó sọ ó ní ẹ̀wò ó ní president Ààrẹ Tinubu ó ní bàbá yẹn ń ṣiṣẹ́ takuntakun ó ní bàbá yẹn ń ṣiṣẹ́ takuntakun ó ní pé àwa náà tá a wà nílé ìgbìmọ̀ aṣòfin ó ní agbúdọ̀ kí lẹ́yìn bí ìgbà ìkẹ́ṣe ń dáwọ́ ti lé ó ní agbúdọ̀ kí lẹ́yìn bí ìgbà ìkan pé ti ń dáwọ́ ti lé bí ìgbà aláàmú ti ń dẹ́rẹ́wọ́ tiẹ̀ bá ògiri ó ní agbúdọ̀ kí bàbá yẹn lẹ́yìn ó ní bàbá yìí ó ń gbìyànjú ó ní pé bàbá yìí tó tẹ̀síwájú ó ní pé àwọn kan tó jẹ́ lórí àwọn ọ̀gá àgbà ológun orílẹ̀-èdè Nàìjíríà yìí ó nípa àwọn kan ń lo àwọn wàhálà tó ń ṣẹlẹ̀ lórílẹ̀‐èdè yìí nípasẹ̀ ètò ààbò ó ní àwọn kan ń lò ó wọ́n fi ń ṣe bí okòòwò wọ́n fi ń ṣe bí okòòwò tó jẹ́ pé nínú màdàrú yẹn nínú wàhálà yẹn nínú ìpànìyàn yẹn òun lọ́wọ́n ti ń jẹ táwọn ti ń rówó bóyá owó tán ní kán ṣe báyìí pé àwọn á máa kó sápá pé inú ẹ̀ làwọn kan yẹn wọ́n ti ń jẹ́ pé òun ni wọ́n pè ní war economy. Ó ní àwọn òun yẹn ni wọ́n pè ní war economy pé ọ̀gá àgbà ológun kan sọ kankan tó ó sọ ó ní war economy. dájúdájú pé àwọn kan nínú wàhálà tá à ń rí lórílẹ̀‐èdè Nàìjíríà yìí ogun ìgbésùnmọ̀mí yìí àwọn kan ń jẹ́ ń bẹ̀. ó ní àwọn kan lábẹ́ ń bẹ̀ tó ń jẹ́ ń bẹ̀. ẹ wá sọ fún mi tó bá jẹ́ pé lóòótọ́ bẹ́ẹ̀ ló ṣe rí báwo ni ogun ìgbésùnmọ̀mí báwo ló ṣe máa di nǹkan tó máa di ohun ìgbàgbé lórílẹ̀‐èdè Nàìjíríà yìí tó yẹ pé bẹ́ẹ̀ ló ṣe rí tó tọ́wọ̀n kan ń jẹ́ ń bẹ̀ tó yẹ pé nídìí kó lè bàjẹ́ yìí nídìí kó lè dàrú lẹ́wọ̀n kan ti ń jẹ àti wójútùú sírú nǹkan tó ń ṣẹlẹ̀ lórí rògbòdìyàn tó ń ṣẹlẹ̀ lórílẹ̀‐èdè Nàìjíríà yìí a lè díẹ̀ o a lè ó dàbá yìí sọ̀rọ̀ ó ní pé gbogbo àwọn nǹkan yìí tó mú wá agbúdọ̀ mú òfin gbúdọ̀ mú agbúdọ̀ ẹnikẹ́ni tó bá tí a jẹ ọ̀rọ̀ yẹn bá símọ́ lórí gbúdọ̀ fojú ẹ̀ balẹ̀ ẹjọ́. tó bá jẹ́ pé ìgbà àkọ́kọ́ tí ẹ̀ ń rí fọ́nrán yìí rè ẹ gbìyànjú láti like ẹ comment ẹ share níbí báyìí mo máa fún yín ní ohun tó ń lọ láwùjọ wa ìròyìn tó ń lọ pápá gan lórí àwọn ọmọ káàrọ̀ òjìrì ohun tó ń lọ ó jẹ́ pé ó yẹ ká tètè mọ̀ ó yẹ ká tètè lajú wa ká ṣe kíni ká la ọkàn wa ká tètè fi ojú sí gbogbo ẹ̀ láwọn máa mú wa ẹ comment ẹ like ẹ share ẹ sì subscribe sí YouTube channel yìí.